My name is Kofi, and this is my story. I grew up in a small town in Kumasi, a busy city in Ghana, where the streets were always alive with the sounds of traders calling out their wares, children playing football in the dusty roads, and the occasional trotro honking as it navigated through the chaos. Life in Kumasi was never easy, but it had a flow that I loved. When I was younger, I dreamt of a better life, a life where I could take care of my family and give them everything they needed. That's why I made the difficult decision to leave Ghana and head to Europe. I wasn't the only one, many young men from my neighborhood did the same. We all had the same dream: make it abroad, send money home, and build something that would last. The journey wasn't easy. I had to work several jobs: cleaning, construction, dishwashing, anything that would pay me enough to send something back home. Every month, I sent money to my family in Kumasi. My mother always said, "Kofi, your younger siblings need school fees, or the house needs repairs." I never questioned it. After all, family is everything, right? Months turned into years, and the demands from home only increased. My mother, my brother Kwame, and even my cousins, all of them seemed to need something. I started feeling the weight of it all, but I couldn't say no. I believed that as the eldest son, it was my duty. I gave my brother Kwame some money to build a house for me, a place where I would reside and start my own family. One day, after working a grueling double shift, I had a conversation with a fellow Ghanaian, Nana. We were from the same place in Kumasi. He had just returned from Kumasi and was full of stories. I gave him some items to deliver to my mother for me. Upon his return, we met at a cafe and decided to talk about Ghana. Over a cup of strong coffee, he leaned in and told me something that shook me to my core. "Kofi," he said, his voice low, "I hate to be the one to tell you this, but your family, they're not using the money you send for what they claim. I saw Kwame at the club, spraying money like he's some big man. And your mother, she's always asking people for more. The house? There's no house, Kofi." I sat there, numb. The words didn't seem real. How could my own family betray me like this? After all I'd done for them, sacrificing my youth, my happiness, everything, so they could live better. And now, to find out it was all a lie. It was too much. But Nana didn't stop there. He told me how Kwame had been seen with different women, driving a Benz around, flaunting the money I sent like it was his own. The thought of my hard-earned euros being wasted on frivolous pleasures made my stomach churn. It wasn't just about the money, it was the betrayal, the disrespect. I didn't know how to process it all. But one thing was clear: I had to go back to Kumasi. I had to see it for myself. When I landed at Kotoka Airport, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger, sadness, and a deep sense of determination. I made my way to Kumasi, the city that once held all my dreams, now tainted with betrayal. The familiar sights and sounds couldn't comfort me, they only reminded me of the life I thought I was building, now crumbling before my eyes. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I needed to see the truth with my own eyes. When I arrived at my family's house, it was exactly as Nana had described: no new repairs, no improvements. The same old structure that had been standing since I was a child, still falling apart at the seams. My heart sank. Kwame wasn't home, but my mother was. She was eating fried rice with chicken with Don Simon on her side. The look on her face when she saw me, surprise, mixed with guilt, told me everything I needed to know. She told me the money I sent to Kwame to build me a house, Kwame had used the money to buy a Benz for his personal use. "Kofi, my son. Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" she stammered, trying to put on a smile with food in her mouth. I didn't have time for pleasantries. "Where is Kwame?" I asked, my voice cold and distant. She hesitated, her eyes shifting nervously. He went out. You know, he's been very busy these days." "Busy with what, Mama?" "Spending my money. Partying with women." Her face paled. She knew she couldn't lie anymore. I could see the cracks in her facade, the guilt she had been hiding. "I trusted you," I said, my voice breaking. "I trusted all of you. I worked day and night, sacrificing everything for this family. And this is how you repay me?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. Not this time. I had to be strong. I had to stand up for myself, something I hadn't done in years. When Kwame finally came home, it was as if the air in the room thickened. He walked in, saw me, and froze. The guilt was written all over his face. He didn't need to say anything, I already knew. I confronted him, demanded answers, but all I got were excuses. He tried to apologize, but it was too late. The damage was done. I couldn't believe I had been so blind, so naive. I made a decision right then and there. I wasn't going to let them take advantage of me anymore. I wasn't going to be the fool who kept giving without question. I called the police, and one by one, they arrested my family members. My mother, Kwame, even my cousins who had a hand in it, they were all taken away. My mother broke out crying while she was being taken away. "Kofi, I gave birth to you, don't do this to me." As they were led out in handcuffs, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with sorrow. I never thought it would come to this, but they had left me no choice. They had taken advantage of my kindness, my love, and I couldn't let it continue. As I stood there, watching the police cars drive away, I knew one thing for certain: never again. Never again would I let anyone, even my own family, take advantage of me. As the police cars disappeared down the dusty road, I stood alone in the courtyard of my family's home, the same place where I used to play as a child, where my mother would call us for supper, where my father, before he passed, would gather us around for evening prayers. Now, the house felt empty, hollow. The memories, once warm, had turned cold. The neighbors had gathered, whispering among themselves. They looked at me with a mix of curiosity and judgment. I knew what they were thinking: how could I do this to my own family? But they didn't know the whole story. They didn't know the years of sacrifice, the betrayal, the lies. They didn't know the nights I went hungry just to send a little extra home. I pushed through the crowd and entered the house. The silence was deafening. The air was thick with the scent of stale food and unwashed clothes. I hadn't noticed it before, but now it was all I could smell. It felt like the house had been neglected for years, just like the trust one had in my family. I walked through the rooms, each one a reminder of what I had lost. The living room, where we used to gather as a family, was now cluttered with junk. The walls, once vibrant with life, were now faded and cracked. I found myself in my old bedroom, the one place that still held a bit of my past. The bed was unmade, the sheets dusty. On the wall, there was a faded poster of Michael Eschen, a reminder of simpler times when all I cared about was football. I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. What now? What do I do from here? I had taken the first step, but the road ahead seemed uncertain. The anger that had driven me this far was starting to fade, replaced by a deep sense of loss. The following days were a blur. I went through the motions, visiting the police station, meeting with lawyers, handling the fallout from my decision. The news of my family's arrest spread quickly, and soon everyone in Kumasi knew what had happened. Some TV talk shows even discussed it. Some people supported me, saying I had done the right thing, while others condemned me, accusing me of betraying my own blood, saying I shouldn't have done that to my mother. One day, as I sat in a small spot in Adam, nursing a bottle of malt, an old classmate of mine, Apia, found me. He sat down across from me, his face somber. "Kofi," he began, "I know this has been hard on you. But I want you to know, you did the right thing. Sometimes, standing up for yourself means standing against the people you love." I nodded, but his words didn't bring me much comfort. "But what now, Apia? I've lost everything. My family, my home. What do I have left?" He leaned in, his eyes filled with concern. You have yourself, Kofi. And that's enough. You've spent so much time taking care of others, you've forgotten to take care of yourself. Now's the time to focus on you. His words hit me like a ton of bricks. He was right. I had spent years pouring everything I had into my family, losing myself in the process. I had forgotten what it meant to live for myself, to have dreams and aspirations that weren't tied to someone else's needs. That night, as I lay in bed, I made a decision. I would rebuild, not just the house I had dreamed of, but my life. It wouldn't be easy, and it would take time, but I was ready. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of purpose, a glimmer of hope. I started small. I found a place to stay, a modest apartment in Asakwa. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I got a job at a local construction company, using the skills I had gained in Europe. The work was hard, but it was honest, and it gave me a sense of pride I hadn't felt in years. Over time, I began to reconnect with old friends, people I had lost touch with during my years abroad. They welcomed me back into their lives, offering support and encouragement. Slowly, the weight of my past began to lift, and I started to see a future for myself that wasn't defined by my family's expectations. But the past wasn't done with me yet. One day, I received a call from Kwame. He was in prison, serving time for the fraud he had committed. His message to me was full of apologies, regrets, and pleas for forgiveness. He talked about how he had let greed and jealousy get the better of him, how he had lost sight of what really mattered. He asked for a chance to make things right, to rebuild our relationship as brothers. After the call, I sat down for hours, pondering over his words. Forgiveness had always been a part of our culture, something that was expected. But after everything that had happened, could I find it in my heart to forgive him? Could I trust him again? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. The weeks turned into months, and slowly, life in Kumasi began to feel normal again. I found joy in the small things, walking through Kijiedia Market, hearing the familiar shouts of traders, feeling the warm sun on my face as I passed by the KNUST campus. The city, with all its chaos and beauty, reminded me of who I was, of where I came from. One evening, as I stood on the balcony of my apartment, looking out over the city, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready to face whatever came next, with or without my family by my side. As for Kwame and the rest of my family, I didn't know what the future held for us. Would I forgive them? Would we ever be close again? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain, never again would I let anyone, not even those I loved, take advantage of my kindness. I had learned my lesson the hard way, and I would carry that lesson with me for the rest of my life. This chapter of my life had come to an end, but a new one was just beginning. The road ahead was long, but I was ready to walk it, one step at a time.